Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. I'm back with another guest, and today I'm with Torrin Minutillo. Nice Italian boy, Minutillo. Torrin, welcome to our podcast. Well, multiple voices.
Thank you. Really pleased to be here.
Um, Torrin is in Perth, West Australia, so it's evening there while I'm recording in the early afternoon. And previously, before we got on, I was asking him about his name, and he was telling me how Turin was a changed form of Ettore, an Italian name, bona fide Italian name, and his parents had immigrated to Australia, very similar to my story. And why I pinpointing him, I really, because I always joke about the way I work. People say, "Well, how do you fall in love? How do you make decisions? And I say, when I find somebody, I take my club, get out of my cave, hit them on the head, and drag them by the hair back into my cave. And that's what I did with Torrin. So, who is Torrin? Torrin is a person who's been in business. He has experience in business. He has 32 years experience in business. He's currently the owner of a real estate company that was established in 2007 that was nearly wiped out from the 2008 global financial crisis. But he not only survived, he also thrived after a lot of work on what he calls his inner game. Now, I'm going to ask him straight away. Remember that, Torrin. I'm going to ask you, what is that name, inner game? Because I know it's a metaphor, but I'll ask you more. He evolved in the last 4 years to focus mainly on helping other business owners develop themselves by empowering achievement with courage. He published his first book in 2021 called The Essential Inner Game, enjoying a fulfilling a fulfilling life, being of service to others. He describes what he does as a strategic business life mentor. His coaching business is called Atterjay Coaching Systems. Now, first, I'm going to ask you about that inner game. Tell us what that inner game is.
Well, the way I see it is that from a business perspective, there's two parts to a business, as you as a business owner. One is an outer game, which is what everybody gets to see, or how you perform your customer service and how you interact with your
Okay,
marketplace.
so it's like a
And then
role, a business role, or a business
well,
hat.
it's the function. It's the
Mm-hmm.
function of business. How you, as a customer, will interact with a business
Uh-huh.
and a business owner. But that's how you interact with the business. So it's what the people get to see. And sometimes a good way to explain it is it's like when you go to a show and you
Yeah.
see everything that happens on stage when the curtain opens up,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't see what happens in the background to create that
Yeah.
show in all its performance. So the inner game is really the inside voice that you have that helps you thrive in the business
Right.
world, and all the
Right.
things that you need to be able to, things
Mm-hmm.
like having resilience and the method of thinking, your mindset, everything that you have internal that creates this external part of your business. And,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, so I think that's the distinction, is that the outer game is what everybody gets to see
Uh-huh.
about your business, and your inner game is what you only get to see in your business.
Uh-huh. And so let's talk about the outer game. What in your life, in your specific life, I'm going now personally speaking,
Yeah.
what is the outer game? What does it look like if you had to describe it to someone?
Well, I would describe it exactly what you see in your experience of interacting with me as a business owner, right? So if I'm the business owner that's driving a business and you're my customer,
Mm-hmm.
everything that you see or your experience in interacting with that business will be the outer game that you get to see. But you don't get to see my inner thoughts, what I'm worried about, what I'm concerned about, how I'm planning, what my
Okay.
strategies are. So that's my inner game of how I'm
Okay.
developing. So your inner game has the biggest impact on what your outer game looks like. Okay,
Right.
so
And so
it's just
n-
two.
exactly, but
Yeah,
now we're at the book. We're at the title of the book, The
yeah.
Essential Inner Game. Now, this was 2012.
Yeah, so
2021,
earlier this year.
just
Yeah, so
a few months
2021,
ago.
May 21.
All right, so it was born and conceived within this period, this difficult pandemic period, wasn't it, or before then?
Oh, it was sort of leading up to it, but I think the pandemic has sort of brought emphasis to the fact that depending on how well your inner game is developed, is how well you're going to become resilient to what the pandemic has done to
Hmm.
us,
Yeah,
and shaken up a lot of business owners, and everybody's now looking at business completely different. Not every business, but a
yeah.
lot of businesses in the world have been affected. Um, but leading up to that, I think aside of the pandemic, it's still, I believe, the most important part to become successful in business is to really grow a strong inner game, or your inner being, who you are as a person, to become resilient to all that business throws up, because it's not easy to run a business, particularly over a long
Okay,
period of time, to
and
try and get some sustained
for
success.
you, Torrin, I have to hold myself back from saying
Yeah.
ettore, the
No,
Italian
you can say it
version.
to them.
Torrin, from your perspective, I mean, Torrin Minutillo, what does the inner game consist of? Developing your inner game for you personally, what did that mean? Okay, not
That's a really
in
good
the
question.
abstract. Hmm.
Yeah, I suppose the best way I can describe it to you is that when you think about the human condition and what it involves, I look at like personal development as psychological development. So we all are on a psychological development journey. So your inner game is really about building that psychological resilience. I think I'll come back to that word because it's probably the one that is best described, how you respond to the situations that come up in business. So your mindset, which has a huge impact, but I think mindset can be a bit of an overused word. It's a
Hmm.
bit sort of, people have now, it's become commercialized, the word
Right,
mindset.
right.
And I think the distinction from something like an inner game is to get you thinking about, well, how are you thinking? How are you responding to all the situations that happen in a business life? And I'm talking specifically business, but these are just personal development journey, psychological journey that show up in business or in relationships or in finances or all other aspects of your life. But where my focus is on helping people get through their business journey by getting them to understand is that their inner game has a huge impact on the results they get. So for me, um, it was really about starting to look inwardly for the answers that I was looking for on my business journey rather than looking outwardly, which is where most business owners focus, is on the outward journey of their business life and not on their inward journey of who they are becoming to achieve what it is they want to achieve.
Now wait. Um, every phrase, every comment, everything you've said so far, there was always that word business in, never personal.
Mm.
So even the inner game, it had your perspective and your objectives in terms of business. My question is that for me, an inner is, your own psychological makeup, your
Yep.
own philosophy, if you can add that.
Yep.
And for you, what was that side of that inner game that most uh, was in need of a tune-up, was in need of
Mm-hmm.
a slight change, was in need of an update in that period when it occurred?
Yeah, I think there was a big turnaround. So, like a lot of people who get into business, is that you just follow the leader a little bit, and you look to what everybody else is doing, and you don't necessarily create your own pathway, because conventional wisdom will tell you exactly what you should and shouldn't be doing along the
Mm-hmm.
way. So for me, it was probably out of a place, like a lot of people, where you get a crisis in your life, you
Mm-hmm.
get a situation where things aren't working out.
What did it look
For
like, this
me,
crisis?
yeah,
What did it
yep. So
materialize as?
yep. So I probably by 2008, I was 44 years old, so I
Uh-huh.
was considered middle age. I'd spent 20 odd years at that point, or close enough to, in business.
Yeah.
But then 2008 really rocked me around, and I had multiple properties, had a thriving business,
Yeah.
um, but I wasn't mentally prepared for a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have a strong developed inner game, or I hadn't developed psychologically enough to be able to be resilient to what was coming my way. And I think, the behavior was one of denial, one of maybe overconfident in my own abilities. And I think so that the change or the shift that happened through that period was me sort of figuring out, why did I get to that place? What was my behavior? What was driving me
Mm-hmm.
to get to a point where I wasn't perceived to be successful? And I stayed in a period of about 3 years till I figured this all out.
Were you
And,
able to
and
figure that out? Well, you said 3 years. 3 years is a long time. Did you
long
have
time.
intuition of where it started, or was it precisely it took every month, every month, every month for the whole
Yeah,
3 year period?
it was the best. It's interesting. I described this to someone the other day. It's a bit like, what was driving me was to support my family. Like a lot of people, in businesses, one of the driving forces is to make your life better, to support your family around you.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found was I was spending too much time thinking about that rather than thinking about, how do I develop myself to be a better business owner,
Yeah.
to be able to succeed, whatever success was for me. And through that period of, because you get into a negative spiral, things aren't working out for you. So you try and make a move, but you're making a move from a pressure point rather than a clear air. And I use this analogy with another person the other day I was talking to. It's like when you're on an aircraft and you hit turbulence and they drop the air mask down and they say to you, make sure you put the oxygen on yourself
Right, first.
breathe clearly before you start helping everybody
Mm-hmm.
around you. So essentially what I did that for 2 to 3 years, I put the oxygen on myself. I got myself into a better, stable position before I was able to then thrive and help the people around me that I was intending to do in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just a shift in the way I thought. I also started looking more outwardly to who I was helping and how I could make their lives better, rather than focused on just making money and trying to, think that money was going to be the savior of all my, my problems in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it really sort of taught me through that 3 year period to really start refocusing, because what I had done up to that point clearly wasn't working. Because okay, we can blame the GFC, and I did.
Yeah.
But what I
financial
learned,
crisis. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
what I learned, through that global financial crisis was that it wasn't really about the global financial crisis. It was about me and not being prepared and resilient enough to be able to deal with it. And instead of blaming the outside world, I started taking responsibility and then creating my own actions to work my way through that period. The result was that once I started, and I got coaching and I got help. I didn't do it all on my own. But as I started to get good results from this, I went really deeper on the human condition and really went to study hard, read hundreds of books over a period of 4 to 5 years around, the human condition, the experience, the psychological development, how me as a human being was developing through that, looking back at the results, what was happening in my life when these things weren't working out, to a point where I started to get much calmer about where I was going, and applied skills to it as you develop and you get skills, and then as I started moving forward, I literally in that space of 3 years I had some major turnaround, and
Give us
financial
describe
success
one.
came pretty quickly.
Describe one for us in more or less detail. A turnaround. What was it? How could you? What was the signal for you that there was a turnaround? Because I'm imagining it, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I think firstly was to start focusing on, and it's one of the chapters in the book that I wrote, is like start focusing on the client and the value you can bring to them versus how much money you can make on a day-to-day basis. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So what that did was change my whole energy in how I was approaching my work. And so this is now in the real estate business. And what I found in the space of 2 to 3 months, when I shifted that focus away from me and sometimes my own detriment, I was attracting better quality clients and more people towards me. And the interactions and the energy I was having with these people was creating good business, and it just started to flow and it became a lot easier.
Yeah. When you
and I think it was because I didn't have the end. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Because you
I
didn't
was
think.
just going to say I didn't have the anxiety
Yeah,
around
yeah,
the next dollar I was going to make.
right,
You know,
right.
I
And
was
so
more concerned to
this is why,
focus on the
yeah,
person.
this is why I interrupted you when you say I attracted better clients. What would a better client for you be? My first impression is, well, if they're going to buy a house, they have money, right? But is that what it is essentially? Better clients.
Not necessarily. So probably the bit that we missed out on is that in my real estate career, my focus is on commercial real estate. So I
Yes.
wasn't
Yeah.
selling residential homes, right?
Uh
So
huh.
I was dealing with I was dealing with commercial business people,
Yeah.
um, and so better quality clients was being attracted to me who had, maybe high net worth people who at first, we all have a bit of imposter syndrome around us. We're not sure of whether we're capable or we can do this. But as my confidence grew and I was focused purely on who I was helping, I started to attract higher net worth people to deal with me because I was service based orientated
Uh
with
huh.
their needs in mind and not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, then you would get a referral network happening, and better
Ah.
quality clients in business is, one of the ways to make more money is to actually serve better quality clients who value what you got to offer
Mm-hmm.
more than people who are not prepared to value
Yeah.
what you got to
And so
offer.
you're reaffirming something that many people who come on my show reaffirm, is that much of the work is done by word of mouth, regardless of how
Mm.
many websites we have. But um,
Yeah,
people who refer others to you, which is
yeah.
then almost the guarantee of the client or the quality of that client. Um, I'm looking at your information, your profile, and okay, we have the book that's 2021, and then there's this Attergy coaching systems. My coaching business. Your coaching business is what is this Attergy? I'm not that's sure I'm saying that right. It must
You've
be
got it spot
energy,
on.
action. I don't know, attention on energy. I
Well,
don't know.
it's what I would refer to as the foundational blocks of doing anything, and that's attitude and energy.
Ah,
So
attitude.
if you apply the right attitude with the right amount of energy, that's the starting point of achieving anything that you want to achieve. Because with the wrong attitude and the wrong energy, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to go in the incorrect direction. So I made up that name
Mm-hmm.
purely with those two things in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, yeah, attitude and energy? So that's where the name comes from.
So now energy is a big term. It's
Yeah,
mindfulness is also a term that is overused, but we hear it all the time, like you said, and you mentioned others.
yeah.
But energy is also one of those. So what is energy for you?
Hmm. What a big question.
Yeah, well, you asked for it.
um, it's a huge part in that. I believe in that how you behave. Well, I've certainly evolved now to
Hmm.
become, and this is what I teach my clients that I'm helping now through their business journey. So I don't know how much time I've got here, but
No, I mean,
no.
as long
I'm
as
just
you're
trying to get
dancing on
succinct.
that dance floor, I will not shut the music off, obviously. Go
Okay.
to it, Torrin.
No, fair enough. Well, let me go back to go forward. Is that
Good, good.
one of the things one of the things I talk about a lot is the line of courage, right? So
Sorry, say
there's
that again, please.
a line of courage,
Ah,
a line of courage.
oh,
So
oh,
and
glue. Wait, don't glean over that. Come on, tell us exactly what that is.
okay, so this is born out of the life's work by a guy called David Hawkins,
Yes,
um, who I don't know if you're familiar with David Hawkins'
it's a
work,
name
but
that it's
he
familiar
spent
to me.
yeah, so a psychologist who spent 30
Hmm.
years of his life doing a study. And what he did was he calibrated all, different behaviors and ways of being from, say, a zero up to 1,000.
Hmm.
And the zero is shame,
Uh huh.
right up to 1,000, which is enlightenment, right?
Uh
There's a
huh.
whole lot of different things that happen. And
Yeah.
how he put this together was what he calls the map of consciousness,
Uh huh.
which is what I've adopted. And so there's a whole lot of behaviours that sit below the line of courage, and then there's a whole lot of behaviours that sit above the line of courage.
Uh huh.
Right? So just to give an example, I won't go too deep into his study because it's very comprehensive, but on a scale,
Yeah.
Courage calibrates at 250 out of 1,000.
Yeah.
And so there's a line in the sand, if you like, which is the line of courage at that 250. So
Uh-huh.
there's a whole lot of things that we do that fit below the line of courage.
Right.
Things like regret, denial, being
Uh-huh.
vengeful,
Yes.
blame,
Right.
victim mentality, condemning, complaining. So they
Sure.
all sit below the line of courage, right? And then above the line of courage is understanding, inspiring, responsibility. And the list goes on. There's lots of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason why that's important when it comes to the energy is that when you behave below the line of courage, and by the way, according to David's study, 85% of the world's population live below the line of courage, and only about
Yeah.
15% consistently live above. So empowering your life is about living above the line of courage as
Mm-hmm.
consistently as possible you can.
Okay.
Where the energy comes in is that when you live below the line of courage on a consistent basis, you create an energy field around you that attracts more of that to you.
Uh-huh.
And when you live above the line of courage and you like empathetic, compassionate, you become vulnerable, forgiveness, empathetic, acceptance, all these things, right? They're all above the line of courage because it takes a level of courage to actually do these things.
Right.
You create an energy field around you that attracts more of this into your life. Right?
Uh-huh.
So
Wait,
energy.
wait. So this is fundamental, Ettore. You got
We're getting very meaty here very quickly.
no, because now we're in the heart of energy and the law of attraction.
Yep.
Meaning that what you even think, how you practice those
Correct.
thoughts, how you enact those thoughts, how you embody those thoughts is what actually comes back to you because of those thoughts. And so this is when you said, I hate to do this because then I'm taking notes and giving it right back into your face, and it's a terrible thing for guests to hear.
No, I'm up for it. It's okay.
Good. You talk about David Hawkins is his name, yeah?
Yep, David Hawkins.
And he's a psychologist, and his map of consciousness. Now, that obviously, from of course how you speak about it, has influenced your own work, and you say you use that a lot. Can you tell me or give me an idea of how you use it? Do you put people when people come to you, do you have some form of intake form where you measure their line of courage, or you just use this as a perspective that your background knowledge and you've filed it away in the background of your mind?
Yeah, I think it's about so one of my number one tenet in helping people is becoming self-aware of who you are, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think the number one skill in business is becoming self-aware,
Mm-hmm.
so that the old adage, know thyself, and the more you can know about who you are, the better you can understand the
Right.
people around you, and the better you can map out a pathway to wherever it is that you're trying to. Now, bearing in mind, the people who I help and coach, they're coming to me because they're not happy with where they're at in their business life or in their life in general, but let's narrow down to business, right? So I use this map of consciousness to get them to understand you're not getting what you want in your world at the moment. Let's put you through this matrix, this map of consciousness, and tell me how much of the time you are spending below the line of courage in what you're doing, and how much are you spending above the line of courage. And I'll explain exactly.
So they okay, go ahead, explain.
No, I was just going to say
about the noise.
So I literally have a one piece of paper, one sheet that has a line in it that says, here's the line of courage, here's all the behaviours below, and here's all the behaviours above, just to give them an example of what above the line of courage behaviours look like.
So you give them sort of a questionnaire?
Not necessarily a questionnaire. I just literally have a conversation with them by having this as a diagram in front of them. So
I see.
This is after a bit of an explanation of what the map of consciousness, just like I've explained to you what it is and how it came about and why I'm using it. And I get them to identify where they sit on the scale here. Are they spending 20%, 30%, 50%, whatever amount of time? Now, one of the interesting things is that on the first glance, most people will overemphasize how much they spend above the line of courage.
Of
because
course.
none of us want to feel that, we're vindictive, we're in denial,
Right.
we're complaining all the
Right.
time.
Right.
It's not,
And most people
and that
do.
we're blaming. We're blaming. I
Others.
mean,
Yeah.
one of the hidden, what is it? One of the hidden addictions is
Yes.
to always is to blame other people for our woes,
You
right?
got that.
That's
Yeah.
that's one of the
It's
hidden addictions, right?
Yes, it is a
So
big addiction. Forget COVID.
yes,
This
it
is
is.
worse.
So what will happen is, on first glance, they'll go, "Oh, yeah, I'm probably, 70% of the time I'm above the line of courage." And okay, well, let's break down. Let's talk about these things individual. And by the end of a 20-minute conversation, I go, "Actually, I'm probably 80% of the time below, and
Below.
only 20%
Yes.
above."
Yeah.
Now the truth is, Claudia, is that we all shift up and down below the line of
Yes.
courage at any given time, right?
Yeah, sure.
Just how we react to the stimulus that comes into our life all
Yeah.
day, every day. So we will react. So this is about how are you reacting to your world and your stimulus. Are you behaving instinctually below the line? In other words, you're going to denial, you're blaming us,
Yeah.
or are you consistently above the line? So the key point here is that to be aware where you are,
Yeah.
so that you can quickly change. So I run a 90-day program, and I have, that goes for 7 modules. And one of the things, this is one of the key things that we talk about at the start, so that everything that we do in the program references back to this line of courage, and so that people can really get to understand where they sit in it, so that they can become aware. So it's okay to have anxiety, which is
Sure.
below the line of courage, but not for days.
Right.
It's okay to feel. It's okay to feel anxious about something, but if you become aware that, hey, this is not a good behaviour for me, I need to snap out of it because this is below the line of courage. You've now got a scale to work out where you are. But some people feel anxious about something, but then they'll stay in that for days on end, which is definitely counteracting and certainly disempowering for whatever it is they're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, makes total sense, and so much so that it begs the next question, because the way your language, the way you use your language, and this line of courage, it points me in the direction of the archetype of the warrior. So I'm wondering if you deal mainly with men. As we both laugh. It's the elephant in the room, isn't it?
Yeah. No, look, it's
Come on, you can say that.
No. I'm saying I don't consciously go, well, this is more for men than women. Interestingly enough.
No, because it is like, the line of courage. It's not something that I would use in sort of an intake or conversation with a woman. I would use other language. And
I think.
Go ahead.
No, I think that's a better question to ask, right? In that courage, this context, courage here is not about, are you brave to jump off the building?
Sure, of course not.
Fight someone in the dark alley.
Sure.
Right? This is the courage about understanding what your behaviour is and how it's impacting your outcomes that you want.
Right.
And becoming a bit more courageous about how you intentionally go about what you're trying to achieve. That takes courage, right?
Right.
So that's not I don't think that's a male-female necessarily.
No.
What I was going to say, and the reason why I giggled when you asked me about women, is that, like at the moment, this 90-day course I've got 9 people in it, and it's actually 4 women and 5 gentlemen, right? And
really?
The women,
no,
yeah, and
no,
the women
I can't
that are reacting
that.
to this.
I can't believe that.
I'm telling you, that's what it is.
No, wait. Now this is a group.
I can give you their names if you want.
So there are even, So go ahead. How are the women reacting?
Yeah, pretty even. But what I was going to say is that the women in that group have interestingly referred to this map of courage. That I'm going to teach my kids this because it's not just a business thing. This is a life thing that I'm applying to business principles, right? But this is all of us could do with a dash of living above the line of courage on a regular basis. And according to the study, and I certainly believe this is definitely my experience, is that if you can consistently, and if you are at the moment, only 30% above the line of courage, well then the work is to consistently look at your habits and your routines and how you respond to situation.
Yeah.
So you can move to 40% and then 50% and 60% and so on and so forth, right? So that you can eventually get to, I think it's unrealistic to be 100% above the line of courage because, unless
it's life. That's
Buddha,
life.
Yeah, you're enlightened and you're the Dalai Lama or someone like that, maybe.
Right, you got that. You got that right.
But for us mere mortals,
mere mortals,
it's probably unrealistic, and I think that's not necessarily the objective. The objective is to see when you start making this conscious shift in the way you think and the way you respond to your stimulus. So we as you will be aware, is that we live in this space between stimulus and response, right? So we're constantly living in this space, moment by moment, day by day, and ignoring things or not responding is a response.
Yeah.
Right? But how you this is map of consciousness is how you are thinking about your response, not necessarily your response.
Yes, of course. So even if people put themselves above the line consistently, it's significant because it tells you a lot about what they're saying about themselves and what they want to. But still, you mentioned about the women, how they pointed out, boy, I want my son to do this. I want my son. And so they didn't say, I want my daughter to do this. They said, I'm still pointing out this courage, this sort of imprint that men get at even at an early age of courage, courageousness, and the women are more imbued with empathy and being empathic and emotional towards, others. It's fascinating. And so you see, going back to the question, but if you can be objective, do you find that people who come to you, your clients, I'll have to call them clients, are fairly 50-50, or is there a predominance of male?
At the moment, I would say that it's predominant male, but that probably is representative of the fact that, if you took a survey across business owners, there's probably a majority of them are males who are running businesses. That's right or wrong. It's just what
that's the way it is. It's like being present.
Yeah, that's the way it is. So therefore, more males will struggle.
Let's say that you work with other businesses, not only the real estate business, people who are
actually predominantly outside real estate business.
So it's interesting
I've made a conscious choice not to. I've made a conscious choice not to, because I've still got a real estate company that I run as well. In my local area, I didn't want to blur the lines between being a real estate agent and a business
coach.
A business coach.
Yeah.
So it's shifting a little bit now, but when I first started, I wanted to keep it separate just to not blur the lines, and more so for myself too, so I could go, okay, I'm a real estate agent over here, running a business company, and then over here I'm a real estate coach helping people, because the work that I do and how I help them is not necessarily industry specific, it's more about who they are on the psychological journey that interests me. And the interesting thing too, Claudia, is what I found is that it's people in their 40s. So it's like, because when you're a business owner, if you start in your 30s, where most business owners do start, it's not until you get into your 40s that you've had 10, 15 years of experience, sometimes just 5, that you start to look for answers inwardly, right? And the reason is that we're all part of conventional wisdom is, sales, how many customers have you got, how many get more people through the front door. It's all a customer-based driven. But what ends up happening, you might make good money doing that. And you get to your mid-40s, early 40s, and you start to realise that maybe money is not the answer to everything, and to give you some sort of inner peace.
I wish it were. Sometimes I wish it were. I mean, I could go buy everything, and I wouldn't have to do all that inner work. It was so much easier to pay for it. Really.
Well, I think when you do more inner work, you're not interested in buying other things.
I know. But it's hard work. You agree with me. It's tough. I mean, the trials and tribulations, my God. And you think...
I think that...
wonder
I was
if
just going to
it's
say, is
going to end. Is
that
it?
age group? Sorry,
Yeah, yeah.
you go.
No. The age group you were talking about, the end of the boom, not the end of the boomers, the end of the millennials. So you're talking
Hmm.
40 when they get out of that millennial phase and they hit 40, and people start to think, like you just said, that they're in the prime of their life. Most people, when they have a crisis, they
Yeah,
say
yeah.
it's my crisis, midlife crisis, which is two
Hmm.
different. The glass half full and half empty.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're talking
I,
about people who are just, they have to assume responsibility,
yeah,
whether they
correct.
do
Yeah.
or they
Well,
don't.
I think also there's the other. It's interesting how I frame it up, and this is not read anywhere. This is stuff that I've
Uh
made
huh.
up. I've not made up, but I've understood myself. Is that there's like from 0 to 18, society says that we become an adult at the age of 18. I know some
Right.
countries it's slightly different, but let's use 18 as an arbitrary number.
Oh, sure.
And then from 18, let's put another 18 years. That takes you to 36. So I would call
Right.
that your first adulthood.
Yeah.
And this is where you're discovering who you are in your life, what you're doing. You might be
Mm-hmm.
starting a business, working for someone, and meeting a partner in life, maybe getting a mortgage, having kids in school. All that sort of stuff happens in that first
Yeah.
adulthood. So the next adulthood, which is from 36 to 54, right smack bang in the middle of that is the age 45.
Yeah.
And it's in those middle years where you've got this experience of life behind you and you're starting to think in a business perspective on a timeline, how much time have I got left in
Yeah.
my business life
Yeah. Sure.
to make an impact,
Right.
right? And it's in this time, and certainly for me, is exactly what happened. So my crisis sort of came when I was 44,
Mm-hmm.
and I got to that point, I thought, I've been in business for 15, 20 years at that point, but I hadn't achieved what I thought I was going to achieve, not even anywhere near that. So my inner work was about, well, that hasn't worked for me. I need to think
Yeah.
differently about how I'm going to make these next 15, 20 years,
Yeah.
count for me. And so I think what ends up happening in a lot of, particularly you look at business owners who are entrepreneurial spirit, so
Yeah.
they're a bit more risk taking, they're a bit more, looking to achieve more than say the average person, not because any other particular reason. It's just they've got this bent where, because only 10% of the working population ever go into business.
Uh-huh.
The other 90% work for the 10% that own the businesses.
Yeah.
That's just, it's pretty, there might be a variance in different
Statistics.
countries
Mm-hmm.
around that, but that's generally around the world what the situation is. So this 10% that is going through their life journey and their psychological journey get to this middle age, and they're either have really knocked it out of the park and they're flying at that age, or they're reaching the middle of their life and they're thinking, where's this all going? What am I trying to achieve?
Right.
They start to ask different questions,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all based on just life journey in general, not just a business life journey, because there's other factors that go in: relationships, kids going to private schools, all sorts of different factors that come into relationship breakups, all sorts of stuff, and then and you're in the middle of all that. You're a business owner trying to make a business thrive. So that's why the work that I do is really specific about trying to help these people through that period.
Yeah.
And when I talk to 40-year-old business owners, they get this, they understand these challenges, whereas a 30-year-old business owner doesn't quite get it. They're still on the upward trajectory, and they're invincible. They figure that I can fall over and get back up again. Pretty much what I did.
But wait a minute now. This makes me want to say, but are we sure that every 30-year-old today is going to falter at about 40, 45? Is it just a natural turn of events, history repeating itself, even though they're very, very wealthy or thriving at 30? Do they necessarily?
Well, I think they might be financially thriving, but not necessarily thriving from the perspective of what they're trying to achieve out of their life. Now, I'm not saying everything.
Their inner game.
We got to, there's. I'm not saying that 100% will go through this, because there's more to this. Is that how you've developed, what your conditioning is as a child, your family, your circumstances, how you've developed your education, all have an impact on when you go through this business journey and you arrive at this age of 40. So there's not just, some people arrive at this at the early ages of 30 because they become more resilient because their family maybe have been in business and they've seen the ups and downs.
Yeah.
And then others who haven't had a business background but choose to go into that
Yeah.
take longer to mature as a business owner.
Yes.
Right? But I think if I had to take a stab at a percentage, I'd go with Pareto's law and say 80% will end up in this place,
which is high,
in their 40s, which is high.
Yeah, it's very high.
And they're the ones that need the help to get through that period. The sad part, Claudia, is that a lot of them don't. A lot of them don't get help. They don't seek help. Part of being an entrepreneur is that you can figure all this stuff out on your own. So they don't look for help. And they get, sometimes into their 50s and 60s, and the business owns them and they don't own the business.
Right.
And they don't live a fulfilling business life. They basically, the business owns them and they just become, an employee and a slave sometimes to the business, even though they might have financial success.
Let me ask you another question. At that time, 46, 44, when it happened to you, you have a family? Did you have a family at that time with children?
So two daughters.
Two daughters. And so how much did they, or did your family context help you in seeing and being aware of things that you hadn't been aware of previously prior to that crisis? Did that have a hand? I mean, what I want to say is I'd like to contrast that in relation to someone who does not have a family with offspring, because offspring have a way of showing you, hey, we're here, where we're going to be in the future. Where are your future?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I think the drive or the want to succeed, when there was days when it was tough and the easy thing would be to go, why am I doing this? Surely there must be an easier way.
Yeah, have a drink. Take LSD.
Yeah.
Eat chocolate.
Drink copious amounts of red wine and hope it goes away.
Exactly, yeah. Red wine, lots.
I'm sure there was plenty of days like that too.
Yeah.
But I think probably what you're alluding to is sometimes the drive comes from outside who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And that is generally, well, certainly for me, we talked about being of Italian heritage, and I'm the youngest of 7 boys. Families are bigger, is a big impact on my life from when I was little. So to me, family is everything. And so, I've got 2 young daughters. When I was going through that crisis, is that for me, at the time they were young, they're now young adults and forging their own way in life. But for me, it was about, well, how do I provide an example for them that, to be resilient and to succeed.
The role.
So you become a role model for them. I mean, at the same time, there's my wife as well in all this, and she was going through all the ups and downs that I was going through. So it was a family unit situation for me. And I agree, not everybody has that or has that desire.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, one of the other things one of the other tenets of what I teach is the fact that we all live this, which ties into this. What you're saying is that we live this macro life where we inhabit. And what's going on in our subconscious when we show up to work in our business is there's a money conversation, there's a time conversation, and there's a family conversation that's buzzing around in our subconscious at every given time. And depending on where you are on your journey, one of those is more prominent at any given time. So when you first start out in business, it's all about survival, making money.
Yeah.
You're doing this because of someone outside you, usually your family. But then the clock ticks to a point where time becomes more important to you, right? Time, and like for me in my business journey at the moment, I'm 57 now, is time has become more important than money.
Yes.
And although family is important to me, I've got my family unit past any danger, if you like, or they're well adjusted, they're in a good place. So for me, it's about how do I get the best out of my time, and what I'm doing is serving others to see this and help them. And then I get great fulfillment out of doing that.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that subconscious is that family bit doesn't necessarily have to be your sibling or your kids, your
Uh-huh.
wife, it could be someone who's important to you outside
Yes,
of who you
yes.
are in your
In there,
life.
right.
That you want to help, or whoever it is. It might be your parents. There's lots of stories about people who've done really well in business and they want to buy a house for their parents because they've struggled all their life and they've never
Right.
had anything, right? So there's always an external motivation, which we can frame up into the thing. So this is the macro. Then there's the micro of what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, which is
Yeah.
the life that you inhabit every day.
Yeah. Well,
There's,
Torrin, you've given us such a picture of a real. It's not a photograph. It is a panoramic view. I mean, you've given us a portrait of what you do, very,
thank you.
very in detail. And I made you go under the surface. Forgive me for those tough questions at times.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, yeah. With tough questions come, as one of the coaching rules is, it's about asking better questions. It's not providing answers. So, from the better questions, you get better answers.
Yeah. So, where can
So I
people
appreciate that.
find more about you? I have here your website, www.attergy.com. Is that the
Yep.
best? And
Yeah,
there's
that's the
also
best place. Yeah, that's the best
okay,
place. So there's a
okay, and
few
then I'll
resources on there. There's
mhm,
certainly got
good.
links to be able to connect with me. I'm also offering a free copy of my book, and I'll send it to anywhere that it needs to go. So this is a real book. So it's not a where's my book?
It's a real book.
It's not a PDF. It's a real book.
Oh
It's not a
wow!
PDF. I have sent you a copy, so you should get that in the mail soon.
Oh, that's sweet.
So it's something that, and the book is really about providing awareness to the
Yeah,
things that you could focus on. It's the 10 insights and guiding principles that every business owner should know is a subtitle, the essential in the game. And I just break down into 10 different things that I think are good to building a good in the game.
yeah.
And you won't find any strategies, tactics,
Aha.
marketing
Good.
funnels.
Good. Good.
You
Good.
won't find any of
No
that.
solutions.
What you'll find is a lot of interesting insight
Hmm.
into how to develop your mindset, your inner game, and it's also, someone said to me the other day, it's a bit of a high performance book too, because if you want to become a high performer in business, there's certain, inner game or
Aha.
mindset
Yeah.
that you need to have, and a lot of these principles help you become a high performer in business.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
true.
so I'd encourage anybody to jump online, addergy.com/book, and you'll be able to fill in your details there, and I'll get a book out in the mail to you and go from
Oh
there.
wow, that is great. That's fantastic. And so, my pledge is to invite you back when you have the second one coming out.
Well, I'm in the process of the second book, Mastering the Inner Game. It's called.
How could I not
And
guess?
you get the inner game
Is it
theme
a
going.
trilogy? Have you planned ahead for a trilogy?
Well, I've got to get past two before I can get to three. But I'm enjoying the work, and I'm really loving, getting good results for people. And I have a philosophy, Claudia, is that if we can all just, fix our own corner of the globe a little bit
Yeah,
and help the people
that's
around
right.
us,
That's right.
then the world will be a better place rather than
Yeah,
trying to solve all the big problems on the planet.
of
Let's look
course not,
after our
which is
small little
impossible.
problems
Right,
first,
right.
which is impossible,
So we will,
so that's what I'm
after
looking forward to doing.
we leave each other, we will both do our part. Yeah, really.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for taking the time and
That was a
spending
pleasure.
it with
Thank you very
us.
much.
Bye bye, Torrin.
Thank you.